Well, the internet's abuzz right now. Everybody is talking about Army Painter Fanatic, and I'm one of the lucky few that was able to try this paint out. I've had it for about a month or so, and I want to give you guys my thoughts on it. What's going on, guys? It's Richard here from Crash Course Hobbies, and today we're talking Army Painter Fanatic. Now, like a lot of you, I think, out there, I started with Army Painter as my first paint. About 3 years ago when I got into the hobby, I started with a little, small, like 10 paint Army Painter starter set, and then from there ended up buying the 50 paints, Warpaints, the Mega Set box. And I used those for like a solid year or so and used the majority of the colors and painted a couple of different armies. And so I'm pretty well versed with what the old war paints were like. A lot of people give them a lot of flack, and in terms of coverage and kind of having to fight the paint and stuff like that, there are, a certain amount of colors that are not good and a certain amount of colors that are fine, but there's definitely some issues. And I do want to start off this by applauding Army Painter for acknowledging that their product had flaws and engaging the community to work with them to make improvements to ultimately put out something better. And I think if all the companies out there started to kind of emulate this, we're going to be looking really solid moving forward in the hobby space. So let's talk about what I did to test this paint. So I've got just the basic 11 paint starter set, and inside this box you get 7 acrylic paints, you get 2 metallics, you get the strong tone wash, and a brush on primer. They also throw in a brush and then a little mini for you, so you've got something to kind of get started there, and that's basically what you get. So it was a little bit of a limited palette that I'm working with here. I don't have a purple, don't have an orange, and a lot of this is going to require some mixing to really just use only the Fanatic paints. I have been sprinkling it in throughout all my kind of normal projects. I've been using the gold a lot, the black, and then some of the other colors where I can get away with it just to kind of give them a little bit more testing. But for the initial testing and the purposes of this video, I gave myself the challenge of using this very limited palette to come up with a cool color scheme for this Tau Fire Warrior. I quickly found out that this kind of exercise in using a limited palette was not only a really fun experience, but it also gave me an opportunity to test these paints better than I originally thought I was going to be able to. It gave me a chance to see how they perform by requiring me to use a variety of techniques that utilized every single color. I recently painted a bunch of Tau, so I at least have a pretty good understanding of what I wanted to do to make this model look good, but I needed to figure out how to make these colors do more interesting things and not just have it end up looking like a clown fiesta. The first thing I noticed in putting it on the wet palette is that the paint itself is a little bit thicker than the older war paints, and the consistency is very similar to something like Vallejo if you've used those. You do need to thin them down a little bit, so it's more on the thicker side than something like Pro Acryl, which is a little bit more thin right out of the bottle. I like this though because the medium is very creamy and feels very nice to use. I would almost say, I know Vallejo gets compared to being very creamy a lot of the time, and I would say that this is even more so. It feels very nice to use right off the brush, and it thins down really well. Now, if you're wondering why this particular model looks a little bit jank, it's because I got it in a trade and I ended up using it as a test model, which is why it already has the cloth colored in, although this is really good as it lets us test the coverage. Now, I mixed up a nice gray by combining the blue and brown that went over all of the cloth, and even using a thin down mix, I was able to cover this in a single coat quite nicely. After that, I went over the armor all over with just straight blue. From here, a little yellow and green made a nice pop of bright color to color in the insignia on the shoulder pad. I want to stress that the medium in particular on these Army-Paints Fanatic are a joy to work with. I don't feel like I'm fighting the paint at all, which makes them so freeing to work with. And it's such a night and day difference between the old Army Painter paints. Now, the real highlight of this challenge for me, no pun intended, was glazing in the highlights on this armor. Not only was it gratifying to be able to mix up a really cool turquoise highlight with these limited colors and have it actually work, but Army Painter Fanatic is really good for glazing. And that's one thing that, as somebody who's primarily been using Pro Acryl for the last 2 years, that's the one gripe I have about their paints, is that they're so pigment dense that they're very difficult to kind of thin down into easy to work with glazes. Whereas the Warpaint Fanatic, I feel like, is in the perfect spot to be kind of in the middle, to where it glazes really nice, but it also has good coverage if you don't thin it down too much. And much like advertised, the coverage on the Fanatic paints is really good out of the bottle. And as you can see here, I tested it on some bases just like they do in their marketing videos, just to kind of verify that those are on the level. And then out of curiosity, I grabbed some Pro Acryl and put those next to it in as close of colors as I could get to match what I had. And I found that the Army Painter Fanatic paints actually cover slightly better than the Pro Acryl, which surprised me. Now this is with a single coat, and I did thin the Fanatic paints down to match the consistency of the Pro Acryl paints. Now, the metallics, I've only got 2 to test out, and there's going to be way more in the full range, but from what I'm seeing, the coverage is really nice. The finish looks good. I've been using the gold on my Necrons pretty much exclusively since I got it, and it's replaced Retributor armor for me, which I've been using quite a bit as my favorite gold, and I feel like it's kind of right on par with that, and it's pretty good. What else to say? It's gold paint. It's pretty good. So look, there's a lot of bigger YouTube hobby channels out there than myself that are going to do way more comprehensive reviews that, you know, their opinion of paints is obviously going to be way more for you and have more weight than me, who, you know, I'm a smaller fish out there in the YouTube pond. Who knows what I'm talking about. But I do have a ton of experience in reviewing products. That was my primary channel on my tech channel, you know, many years back. And so I have a lot of experience with that. I will say that I think these are very, very promising, and they're performing better than I anticipated. I was cautiously optimistic, but you know, I was a little bit worried that the hype machine's a dangerous thing. You know, it builds up a lot, and we tend to really get our hopes up, and things will overpromise and underdeliver. But in the case of Warpaints Fanatic, I think that they are very good paints. And the best thing about this is that Army Painter already has the distribution set up to really make an impact for newer hobbyists and people that are getting into the hobby, that, you know, they're going to be everywhere. And so whether you're looking to get new paints, fill out a range that you already have, or whatever it might be, you know, I think this is going to be really good because, you know, younger hobbyists, newer people that are getting into it, Army Painter's everywhere, so chances are they're going to buy the old war paints. They may not perform as good, they may not have as much fun painting. And so just seeing a company take the time to reinvent themselves, come out with a better product, and not be happy with just being mediocre is a great thing. I applaud Army Painter for that. I'm really looking forward to trying more of the Fanatic range, and I have very high hopes for these paints. Anyways, guys, that's it for my quick review of Warpaints Fanatic. Thanks to Army Painter for sending them out to me to try, and I definitely look forward to trying out more as well in the future. Hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on some more of them. You should be able to pick these paints up sometime this month. I think pre-orders are going up, so just keep an eye out for that. I'm sure it's going to be all over the internet. But as always, guys, thank you so much for checking this video out and watching my review. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I've got lots more videos coming for you. Hit the like button, all that good stuff, but I will see you in the next one.